This week, the concluding stories from our series, The Hungriest State. In this episode of The Fisherfolk, we focus on those trying to make a living in Mississippi's fishing industry. We pick up with Ben Posadas of Mississippi State University, who paints a grim picture for the industry itself.
I went through almost every major seafood product being consumed in the country. Compared our production here by our growers or by our fishermen and the imports that we buy from everywhere, the price that wholesalers pay for our growers and the price that our wholesalers pay for those imported products. One country sells it at half the price of what we sell here in the U.S. U.S. product, foreign country A, half. Foreign country B, 75%. So who can compete with that? There's no way. So the margins are getting slimmer and slimmer. Sometimes 1 cent, 2 cents, maybe 5 cents per dollar sale. That's hard, you know. The captain, a crew, and maybe another crew, and maybe another, depending on the size of the boat. A 5 cent per dollar sale profit is not good enough to keep them in the boat. It's gonna kill this industry here.
What do you think the coast is gonna look like in 15 years? Like when in the next few generations, what do you think is gonna happen?
Lesser shrimp, lesser boat. Less boat. Yeah, for sure. Because I see a lot of people that with the older generation had gone out, had retired. So, and a lot of people have been selling their boat from left to right. It's not continuing. The shrimping business is not continuing in the family. It's not being carry on. The generation's not carry on.
You use the term graying of the fleet. What is that term? What does it mean?
It means, my hair is gray here, means the folks working in the fleet are getting older and older over time. And no younger ones are coming and joining the fleet to fish.
Graying of the fleet is a very huge problem. Like I said, when I was 26 years old, I bought my first big shrimp boat, and man, I was the youngest guy out there with this big old boat. And here it is 20 years later, and I'm still the youngest guy out there. Look behind me, and there's not a whole lot of guys coming up. And it's kind of scary.
Right now, what we hear from the fishing families is they don't want their children even going on the boats. They want them to go to college and learn another trade, because it's been so difficult on this current generation that they don't want their kids to have to experience what they've been going through.
The new generation see how hard their parents had to work for it and not make enough. Yeah, they don't want that. They want a stable job, that can meet the ends instead of working their butt off and at the end nothing.
I can tell you, just like any young person or anybody for that matter, they want to work and they want to get paid for their work. And this industry here has become more like gambling. And you're rolling the dice, And people don't like to work and not get paid. And so you can't blame them for that.
Do your children want to fish?
Not really. They don't want to do it full time. They don't. I mean, they will help out, you know, until we find a deckhand, you know. But finding a really good deckhand nowadays is hard because they're not catching enough to pay for the deckhand. So actually, my kids are working for food. So yeah. So to keep this business alive, everybody had to do. The family had to pitch in to work together until we find a better solution.
If your sons don't take over this business or this boat, what happens to the business or the boat?
We probably eventually have to sell it. You know, if my husband can no longer go out because to the aging, getting older, or because of the health reason, then we probably have to sell it. If the kids doesn't take over.
It's hard for young folk to decide and join to become even a crew of a fishing boat. Because the choice is, there are other things that they can do. As life becomes good for these families, they can afford to send their kids to Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and those nice universities, and earn nice degrees, doctors, lawyers, pharmacists. So once they graduate, there's no way they're gonna go back and go fishing.
When I look at the graying of the fleet and the impacts on the long-term viability of the industry, I really am concerned. I've been ringing the alarm bells about this for the past 5 years. I think that in 10 years, if we don't see a course correction, we're going to be in absolute dire straits. With the average age of the fishermen, commercial fishermen, around 54 years of age, 5 more years will put that around 60. And that's getting at a place that's is going to be what I would call irreparable harm to the industry, that we may never recover from that.
Well, just like any household, children, they know that their parents are getting older. They don't pay much attention about that. But once their parents die, that's when they realize our parents did. It's the same way with the fleet. We don't pay much attention to the graying of the fleet. We just pay lip service. Oh, we get some funding for them, we get some training for them. If the young folks come and join, fine. If not, But when these folks are gone, they're gone.
You know, when I think about what the collapse of the seafood industry might be, or what that may look like, we can already start to see pieces of that. If you ride around these harbors from coast to coast, you'll see some boats, shrimp boats and oyster boats beyond repair, rusted to heck and back. These fishermen, if they're not making money, they can't maintain these vessels, which they cost a lot of money to maintain each year. So we begin to lose these vessels. If they don't rot away, they're sold off and they're relocated to other parts of the country. About 25 years ago, we had over 2,000 licensed commercial shrimp fishermen in the state of Mississippi. Today, we have about 300, with about half of those being active. So we're really just a fraction of what we used to be just 25 years ago.
What would the collapse of the Mississippi seafood industry mean for the food security of the Mississippi Gulf Coast?
The way of life, consumption patterns of seafood as well as other commodities will drastically change. trade and industry will be changed. There's gonna be a lot of people who are now employed in the industry, from harvesting, to processing, to wholesaling, to seafood markets, restaurants. Those jobs will be gone. And those revenues that the government gets, local, state, and federal, they'll be gone. There will be more need for welfare checks, and that's not good. That's not good.
But bigger than that, what does that mean for our local food supply? The pandemic really highlighted how important our local food supply chains really are. And many people saw when they went to their supermarkets during the height of that pandemic, they couldn't find beef, they couldn't find chicken, they couldn't find pork. But our boats were out working, and those people, when they couldn't find food, they were lined up at these docks, they were lined up at our seafood dealers, and they were stocking their freezers full of local seafood. You can only imagine if we got in a situation worse than what we were in at that time, how bad things could become without our local food supplies being strong and robust. And so that's why I'm proud to advocate for domestic wild seafood, because I understand how important it is for our local food supply chains. And so we always encourage people to ask who and where your seafood came from. It has such a huge economic impact on the coast. And I tell people this all the time, is the more that we can keep our dollars in the state, the stronger our state economy becomes. It's going to take a lot of work protecting the environment. I think that's our #1 threat right now. We've got to do a lot more than we're currently doing to stop the pollution of our waters. But then we've got to work to train and educate and probably retool the industry to be prepared for the future. That's not going to be the silver bullet, but it's a starting point. And we got to start educating our children that this is a viable career path. And we have to enlighten our politicians on the needs of the industry, because it's a shame to me to have the seafood industry here as one of the most, that built the coast, is so influential on the coast. It seems like we're forgotten now, and it's more about the tourism. And it's something that we should never take for granted, because as we're seeing, it can definitely slip away from us.
Man is smart. As long as they work together, we develop technologies to exploit resources around us to feed mankind. It's tough though. It's gonna be hard for everyone, but I think we'll be able to survive.
A tough industry for all kinds of reasons, but if government can ease regulations, a turnaround may be possible.